for the conclusion, evil in the world and so on, for the conclusion that there wasn't any God. Bill Alston said he shouldn't be applying that evidence to that proposition, but to Christianity, say, as a whole. Draper then replied by making, first with a premise that you, of course, conceded, because it's obvious that the probability of Christianity as a whole has to be at least equal to or lower than the proposition that God exists. Can I take your point this way? All that really follows from that premise is, of course, something about the relation between the two probabilities. So rather than look at the probability of the core proposition on that evidence and then saying Christianity must have a lower probability, we accommodate Draper's point by looking at Christianity, assigning some probability to that, and then saying, well, God exists must have at least that high probability.
I'm not sure I understood it. So,
well, you understood the argument I attributed to Draper, or his defense of why he applied the evidence about evil to the core proposition rather than to the whole.
Right, because the probability of Christianity then would have to be less.
Right. But of course, that only establishes a relation between the two probabilities. It doesn't tell you which to apply the evidence to. It only
which
says,
two probabilities?
The two propositions, God exists, the core proposition, God exists, and Christianity as a whole.
Right.
It just tells you that you can't assign a higher probability to Christianity than to God exists. So that doesn't justify his beginning by applying the evidence to God exists and then saying that Christianity must have a lower probability than that. It's equally consistent with his premise to begin by studying Christianity, assigning a probability to that, and saying, well, God must have at least that high. God exists must have at least that high a probability.
No, I think that's right. And so the way I would put it is, so for whatever yours or my probability of Christianity is, one thing we know is the probability of austere theism has to be quite a bit higher. And let me just mention one thing, since I talked about this core assumption, since you brought up Alston's thing. He's one of the few people whom I think has rejected it. I don't think he went quite far enough, but you're right. In his article in the book, Evidential Arguments from Evil, he actually makes this point. But if we really reject the probabilistic assumption, we don't have to start off by saying, okay, the initial probability of austere theism is at most 1/2, or something like this, and then reason down to the probability of Christianity.
You accept you don't have to do that.
Right, right. I mean, so what we can do is we can start off by, my judgment about how likely Christianity is based on what I believe is right is, a certain level. And one thing I do know is the probability of austere theism has to be higher than that.
Let's thank our speakers.